Joining us now from the Detroit Lions. Find his work there, DetroitLions.com. Our good friend Mike O'Hara. Find him on Twitter at Mike O'Hara NFL. Mr. O'Hara, my friend, good morning to you. Long time no talk. How are you? How's life? How are things? How's your offseason been?
My off-season's been pretty good, and here I am, breakfast with Tony. What more could you want out of life?
I'm telling you what. I mean, this is going to be the pinnacle of the day, right? I mean, this is as good as it gets here at 7:35 in the morning on this Thursday. Mike, it was there was a lot of, Twitter was a little bit of buzz. I think fans were a little bit confused trying to figure out why exactly, with Ben Johnson coming back, all the positive momentum that this Detroit Lions team has. We get the news yesterday that Duce Staley will leave and head to Carolina to take a position on Frank Reich's staff there for the Panthers. This loss of Duce Staley, was this something that the Lions staff was aware was a possibility that could be happening? Can you give us the background and kind of the info and the intel on what went into this?
Well, you don't really know, because it's these things until they happen. They keep it pretty quiet, but they have a background together. Frank Reich and Duce do. They were on the Philadelphia staff together for a couple of years, and I can only assume, and I don't know this for sure, but I can only assume that this is probably a promotion for Duce from what he's doing here in Detroit. Maybe some play calling responsibilities, things like that. I'm sure Duce has, like a lot of other guys, has aspirations of becoming a head coach someday, and this might be a step in that direction to, further improve his background and what he's done, and we haven't heard of him being interviewed for a head coaching job. This might help him in that regard.
Now, there was a report out, I believe it was Justin Rogers, who was reporting that, Duce's mother is not in the best shape, so we wish her and the family, of course, all the best. But, she lives in South Carolina. This obviously puts him closer to that situation as well.
Well, one thing about Duce, he's a good guy. Look, he's a pro football player from head to toe, and he just exudes confidence and desire and everything you want. And first of all, in a player as a running back, probably predominantly with the Eagles, he had 4 or 5 or 600-yard seasons. 1,000-yard seasons, and he would do his weekly a press briefing with us. It was just, it was fun to listen to him. It was informative to listen to him. And in that regard, we'll miss him, but we'll see what they have in mind to replace him.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Who are some names that you have seen or have heard that might be potential replacements for this running back coaching position?
No, I haven't really heard yet, Tony. Really not. That stuff will come down the pike sooner or later.
Is it is now a good time for this kind of change as we get closer and closer? The Senior Bowl, East-West Shrine game, we got the draft right around the corner. Is now a good time to have a departure here, at least to give you a little bit of time to kind of fill that void there?
No, absolutely. You don't want these things to happen like in the middle of May or June or on the eve of training camp or whatever. If you're going to have to make changes, you want to have as much time as you can to do that. And I'm sure that Dan Campbell will be working on this probably as early as today.
With Ben Johnson returning, obviously people were up in arms, right? I mean, they loved it; they couldn't believe it. There was it was some sort of celebration. It was like the second coming of Christ. They're like, he's back! Oh, look at this! But the offense, hey, look, Jared Goff was playing really well. He and Jared seem to have a great relationship. Jared has said as much that Ben Johnson's been as instrumental to him in his career as any coach that he has ever had. They obviously they get along together very, very well. Ben Johnson shut down the conversations of other teams trying to inquire about employing him. What did that say? What did that say to you? You've been around this team long enough, Mike, where to have this kind of feeling in an offseason where there is so much excitement surrounding this organization, to have a coach come back and maybe put aside some of his own personal dreams or desires and say, you know what, I'm not even going to pick up the phone. I'm sticking with the Lions. We got unfinished business. What does that say to you?
Well, I think that number one is that what you just said. He's got a good role here, a good position here, and can only get better. I mean, look, his first game as the official offensive coordinator last year was against the against the Eagles. Lions lose 38-35, and they were off and running offensively. I mean, it was just a completely different team than what we'd seen, at least at the start of the previous season. But then, and they closed stronger, obviously, after Dan Campbell took over play calling midway through. I mean, everybody knows the chronology of that. But one thing about it, and Jared Goff talked about this. He and Ben Johnson spent a lot of time together in the off season. And the one thing that Jared Goff said, look, I'm an experienced quarterback. I think this is his 7th year now. He wanted to at least have some input, just have some say. So he's not trying to run the operation, but he wanted to have just at least some input into it. And Ben gave that to him. And I think probably there's no one thing in building an offense that you do that, and of course everything is fine. There's so many components into it. It's really there's really a lot that you have to cover. But one of the things that Jared talked about was that he really liked play action, and he said they were really good at it in Los Angeles. Well, I think that was one of the strengths of that offense last season. The 2022 season was their ability to, use play action to their benefit. And the results are what they are. They had a 1,000-yard rusher in Jamal Williams. Jared, 29 touchdown passes, only 7 interceptions. And I think this is accurate. But the last nine games of the regular season, without a turnover. So what they were doing was working. Now they weren't averaging, 30 points a game or whatever it was, like they were for the first 4 games. But they were effective. That even in games they lost, that was an exciting, fun team to watch and productive offensively. And I think they got what they hoped for and more from that combination of the quarterback and the offensive coordinator, because it just seemed to me that they were on the same wavelength. And when you have that sort of feeling between the coordinator and the quarterback, it really does help you with the things you want to do.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was 4th and 1 against the Jets. They went play action and hit Brock Wright on that 51-yard catch and run for the go-ahead touchdown there against the Jets. We saw it a lot. It worked a lot, and thank God that it did. So on the defensive side of the football, as Ben Johnson returns for his unfinished business, we love that here.
Yep.
Aaron Glenn's a serious candidate. Now, you mentioned that that early season game, the home opener against the Philadelphia Eagles, where in really the first half of the season, where it felt like once the team pulled in to the parking lot, that you could put 20 on the board right away. They make an adjustment, Mike O'Hara, and all of a sudden Aaron Glenn, he just takes things over, and this defense becomes what I think a lot of people had hoped that it would in the second half of the season. That opponent's points per game, that started to drop like a rock. They were getting to the pressure, and it wasn't just Aiden Hutchinson. It was guys like James Houston and Josh Pascal, John Kaminsky, and so on and so forth. They were pressuring the quarterback. They were tackling well. The secondary was covering very well, giving those guys up front a little bit more time to be able to get to the QB, and we know how these things work in sync. What, in your mind, was really that keystone difference that we saw from the first half of the season to the second half of the season that now has Aaron Glenn once again a serious candidate for a couple of coaching jobs, namely Arizona and Indianapolis?
Yeah, I think probably what you mentioned was the pressure they were getting on the quarterback, but not just the quarterback, but they were being disruptive up front. Look, if you can't control the line of scrimmage defensively, it's really, really hard to win. It really is. And I think the Lions did that as they went along. Now, look, they had some breakdowns. Week 15, Game 16 against Carolina, where they gave 320 yards on the ground. I think that's a tape that you want to bury. I don't think you want to spend a lot of time looking at that one if you're a player or a coach. But by and large, the last 8-9 games they got better and better. And you mentioned some of the young guys who I don't know if you really could have counted on them at the start of the season. Especially Houston, 6th round draft pick, came out and had 8 sacks in 6 games or something like that. That's what they started to do. And I thought, like you mentioned, tackling better. Even veterans like Alex Anzalone, linebacker, had like an okay first season here in Detroit a year ago, but last year really an effective player for the Lions, both as a leadership role, and both sort of running the defense on the field. So I think a lot of things went into it, and there's still work to be done. I would think predominantly and you'll see in free agency in the upcoming draft, I think you'll see the Detroit Lions, try to add some strength up front on the defensive line, and then in the secondary, where I think obviously they need some help there too.
Couple of a little bit more on the coaching side of things. The Lions did hire a tight ends coach in Steve Hyden. What exactly does that mean then for Tanner Engstrand?
I'm not sure about that. We'll have to see if there's a reassignment or whatever. That's one of those to be determined and to be announced.
I would have thought that Dan Campbell called you ahead of time and wanted to go over some things. Mike, you're not on the speed dial there.
I told him, quit bothering me. I got other things to do.
The off season. The guy just wants to have a cocktail and put his feet in the sand, and you guys are bothering him all this coaching news here. So as we look forward to the NFL draft here, Mike, there's a lot of fan speculation, and you know how the fans are. They're gonna unsheathe their swords, and they're gonna go toe to toe over who's a great pick and who's not a great pick. And if we all had a crystal ball, none of us would be sitting here doing this, right? We'd all be in a front office somewhere. But what is the largest priority that you believe that the Lions need to address in that first round if their picks stay where they're at number 6 and number 18?
What I just said, secondary, and then just a good defensive tackle, a guy who can, wreak a little havoc up front. Now, I don't, they're not going to get, the guy from Georgia, but there's some other candidates out there. And there's really a deep pool of defensive backs here. The guy I really like out of Oregon, Christian Gonzalez, for a lot of reasons, not just because he's David Blount's brother-in-law, but he's a guy 6'2", he's got a wingspan, he had 4 interceptions, and he can really cover some ground. Other people don't have him that strong, but in my first mock draft a week and a half ago, I had him going to the Lions at number 6. But we'll see. The nice thing about putting out your first mock draft, you got 2 more to go, so it can change my mind. But I think you're going to see some trades in the first, 1 through 9 up there, all the way down to Carolina at 9, trying to make a trade to move up and get a quarterback. I can see in this, unlike last year, Tony, when the first quarterback went off in the mid-20s, I think you're going to see in the first 9 picks, 3, 4, maybe even 5 quarterbacks go off the board.
Wow. When do you believe that the Lions take a quarterback? Is this a team that could sit back into later, maybe 3rd, maybe 4th round, depending on who's there, draft a guy, get him into the system to start to develop him and kind of secure that backup role?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, because just in general, I want to go back to when Jared Goff arrived here. And I heard people, even sports talk shows, and I'm not knocking anybody. Everybody has their opinion. But an awful lot of people said, well, the best thing that can happen is that Jared Goff fails so the Lions can go out and draft a quarterback. No, the best thing that can happen is that he doesn't fail, that he's a good quarterback, and you can use your draft picks and free agent money on other positions. And I think that's what's happened. And I still hear people saying, well, no, we need to draft a quarterback first in the first round. No, you don't. This guy's in the Pro Bowl. The statistics speak for themselves, and he's only, just turned 28 years old. You can have this guy. He's not going to be Tom Brady, but you can have this guy for another 10, 12 years. I mean, that position is locked down, barring an injury. So I think you're good there. If I'm the Lions, I start looking for a quarterback, late second round, maybe their second round pick, maybe their 3rd round pick, or maybe later. But certainly they have their starting quarterback, but they really do need, and I think this has been neglected too long, they do need a quality backup quarterback, somebody who's really has maybe potential, starting ability to start eventually, but certainly an upgrade over what they've had recently.
Thank you, Mike. I could hug you right now. I want you to know that. Whenever you're walking around, just imagine me today just clutching your leg for saying that right now, because these people are driving me nuts. I try to be the voice of reason, Mike. That's what I am. I'm out here speaking rational to these people. And I said, look, if you have a guy that can play the position, the goal of the front office now is, hey, this and play it well enough, right? And I thought Brad Holmes tipped his hand a little bit, saying you can get a lot worse at quarterback than it's a lot easier to get worse at quarterback than it is to get better.
Right.
I thought that should have been the flare in the sky to everybody pipe down about this quarterback in the first round. but build the rest of your roster. We see Jalen Hurts walk into a good situation as a young rookie quarterback and be able to have some success in year 1 and year 2. We've seen San Francisco trot out 74 quarterbacks this year, and all of them be halfway decent because they have a good team built around them. It's so important to be able to use your draft capital, your free agency money, to be able to bolster your roster so that eventually when you do need a quarterback, you can bring a young man into a situation in which he can be successful, and you're not sticking somebody behind the 8 ball right away. I don't know why that's so hard for everybody to understand.
Well, it's like the quarterback and the goalie and the relief pitcher, the closer in baseball. Those are the positions that everybody knows that they can change those, and they can find better than wherever you are, what your team has. But no, I just think that Jared Goff has proven himself to some degree. I think he's got more to go. It really does. And one thing about him, he's never going to be the most, he's not going to do anything with his legs, really not much anyway, but that's not his style. And a lot of quarterbacks, if anybody noticed, Tom Brady had gotten through their careers without being runners, I think. And one thing about Jared Goff, Tony, and in his closeout press conference, the day after the regular season ended, I just asked him a very simple question. I said, Jared, what does it mean to you that you were in a place where you're appreciated? And he just stopped, thought for a second. He said how much it meant to him. And he said, because it hasn't always been that way in other places. So I think he has a connection here to the Detroit Lions. The Lions have a connection to him. And look, there's more to it than just feeling good about how you're treated and all that. I get it. It's a production business. But I think the Lions have something in this quarterback who is now going to his 3rd Pro Bowl in 7 years.
He is
That's
Michael
3
Hara.
Pro Bowls in 7 years, okay? 3.
3 of them. Not 1, not 2, not 3. You feel like LeBron James up there on stage. It's great for Jared Goff, and I'm happy for him, and I'm happy that it's worked out to this extent to where now if there is a way for this team to make that next step, and it's not easy in the NFL. Anything can change at any moment. We know this league means not for long. It's not a guarantee that they're going to go to the playoffs because of some of the success that they had this year. But if there is a way that he can get into the playoffs and they can win a game, he will cement his legacy for the fans here in the Motor City. Mike O'Hara, find him on Twitter, at Mike O'Hara NFL. We appreciate you so much. Thanks for waking up with us this morning, my friend. Let's touch base soon.
Sounds good, Tony. Thanks for having me.